Hello, my friends. Welcome to a brand new episode in this week in what is missing, in what is missing in marketing today. Hope you're well. And today we're going to be talking to Jackie. Now, Jackie helps people with, I guess, Jackie, is it more speaking confidence, and is it like actually understanding like how to get a story? Just to start there.
Yeah, it's all about that.
But before we get into, obviously speaking and I think content as well. What do you think is specifically missing in marketing today?
Well, firstly, I have to say I'm not a marketing expert, but I help people apparently market themselves effectively with their voices. What's missing in marketing today? I don't know. I was thinking about this, and maybe there's an element of trust, I think, and that is off the back of AI. Nothing against AI. I love it. I absolutely do love AI, but I think people are just a little bit wary of what it is they're watching, because I think there's quite a lot of disinformation and lots of people trying to be somebody that they're not in order to impress. And I think we as consumers are getting a little bit wise to that. So I think there's an element of trust that's missing.
Do you think, because a lot of people talk about AI, they say that maybe we're all going to be out of jobs, or maybe it's going to replace. Specifically AI has seemed to be targeting the creative sector as a whole, right? Maybe by proxy or maybe by accident. But would you say that is true? Are we all about to lose our jobs, and we're all, the universal income argument is necessarily going to happen, or is it more actually in the middle ground?
I think we'll adapt, as we have with every other piece of technology that's come along. I think what is different with AI at the moment, as you say, it suddenly us creatives are thinking, oh, we didn't understand that somebody could possibly take away. We're all creative as human beings. Every single human being is creative. But if that's your job, if you're a writer or an artist or a singer, songwriter, whatever, there suddenly is something that could take away that element of creativity, your IP, your intellectual property. And I don't think that's actually happened before. So I think in terms of being creative, I think maybe there is something to worry about. But otherwise, robots have been doing jobs for ages. When computers were invented, we all thought that was going to be the end, that we'd never have a job again. But I think we adapt, and I think AI will be similar.
I think there's kind of two camps right now for me personally, right? From the people I speak to and the people I connect with on a regular basis, there's kind of the ones who are using it to become more efficient, and they're utilizing it, and maybe they are using it for research, and they're using it to help them write, and etc. And we can, I'm sure, go into a bit more use cases. But then there's also the other camp, which is like, no, I'm not going to touch it. And my worry with those people is I have a feeling they might, because they're not in using it, and they don't understand it, and they're not even at least playing with it. Their concern, well, my concern for them would be they might get left behind, right? And they might be in a position where actually maybe they're missing opportunities because they could be more efficient with AI, but also actually their idea of what is a job, so their idea of a camera operator, their idea of an editor, etc., might cease to be as valuable to a client or a market, an end consumer, because they haven't understood that AI can actually replace certain elements of that.
Yes.
I think, of course, we don't know. AI changes every day, etc. But I think as it stands right now, the time of broadcast, the time of recording, I don't think it will ever replace a human in the concept of strategy, strategic thinking, etc.
Yeah.
From what we've seen.
What we've seen.
As an editor, yeah. As a support, as a junior, sure. Would it? There's a lot of conversation in the video space about, am I ever going to be able to put the hours of material I have of me talking on camera into an AI, and then it will be able to basically give me this infinite feed of me? Then it will look and sound and have the same mannerisms, and etc. And actually, should we have that? Well, I guess is the question that comes from that.
That is the point, isn't it? That there is that element of trust. Is what you're watching actually in real time? Is that actually the human being that's thinking on the spot in that moment? Those are the things that we won't know as consumers, that then you kind of end up feeling duped somehow. And I think the people that don't touch AI, exactly as you say, will get left behind. But it's an element of fear. It's an element of of touching it and it all falling apart. You know, the sort of, certainly my parents' generation took ages to get into the computer world because they suddenly thought, well, if they press a button, they'll lose everything. And I think it's similar with AI, because people aren't going in and just experimenting and exploring and seeing what it can do, that actually they're frightened of breaking it, so they don't try.
Do you think there's also kind of this is the way I've worked for years, this is the way I am, this is the way I've done it? You know, I've been hired as a camera op for years, I've been hired as an editor for years, so no, that couldn't, you know, I mean, is it a level of pride, I think, or level of like, oh no, this couldn't be replacing me, you know?
Well, yeah, I'm sure there is a level of that as well, but I think it's people are frightened of change, you know, and especially if there are people out there that have been in the same doing the same job day in, day out for years, and it's kept them safe and it's kept them in their comfort zone and, you know, family fed and all of that. If suddenly something is threatening that, then that's when people kind of, there's a fear around it, and then they would rather fight it than actually understand it.
You work with, I would say, a lot of thought experts, a lot of people who have maybe experience or a story to tell, perhaps. I mean, why do you think so many people struggle to A, tell their story, or B, actually help that story connect to an audience, would you say?
Because people don't value their own stories. They don't. The number of people that say to me, "But I don't have a story. Who'd be interested in my story?" But the part of my job that I absolutely love is going, okay, well, let's see. Let's start unpicking what it is that makes you you. And once you start getting underneath what they think they should be, that you suddenly then find these amazing stories. And then one of the very first questions I always ask when I'm working with clients, no matter who they are, what experience they've had, you know, the age, gender, whatever, you know, culture, whatever, it's, you know, what were you playing when you were 9 years old? What were you doing when you were a child? What lit you up then? And usually I find that whatever that is that they were playing in the playground, you know, whatever they, you know, for me, it was grabbing everybody, right, we're going to put on a play, let's, you know, and I'd write it and direct it and star in it, obviously. And then we'd play it, perform it to the class at the end of the week. So that was what I was doing. And that I can see that progression in me from that moment. And I think everybody has an element of that, no matter what they're doing, even if it is a sort of a day in, day out kind of job that they've done forever. There's a reason that they get up in the morning. And usually, especially with thought leaders, thought experts, subject experts, they are expert in that area because there's something in there that lights them up. There's something in there that they're passionate about. And you can follow that story. But they don't value it until they speak it out loud to someone like me, that I can then go, now that's interesting, and I can see that I can then join the dots, and you know and then I start drawing out the stories. And so then when they get in front of an audience and start sharing their story, they can relate it back directly to what it is that they're doing and why it's important to the people that they're speaking to.
Do you think, because a lot of the conversation I have, especially with like accountants, lawyers, etc., right, quite dry businesses perhaps, they go, well, yeah, but my day-to-day and my story is really boring. Yeah, but what I do is actually really boring and really dry and really just, I look at spreadsheets, I look at law, I look at etc. Is their story boring, or is there elements maybe they're not seeing?
Do they feel that other people find their jobs boring, so therefore they're, you know, but you could, I would say nobody works in a business like that for 20 years. Nobody spends all those years getting qualified to do something that they're bored with. And so I think that's a cover. I think they say to other people, no, I have a boring job. You know,
oh no, don't talk about me because it's boring.
It's boring. I just look at spreadsheets. But inside there's going, I look at spreadsheets. So, you know, I'm so excited. I look at spreadsheets. That's what lights me up. And so there's a reason for that. And I always love to get to, you know, what is that? What is it that makes you get up and do that every day? And there's always a story, always a story.
Do you think we sometimes, does it come from that, I don't want people to look at me like I've never really personally struggled with this, but I know many people do, which is the like self-promotion, especially as a business owner or an entrepreneur. We try and put ourselves out there a lot and say, well, that's what we should be doing in my view. But it's the reason why I get the opportunities that I get. It's the reason why, quote, I'm as successful as I am, etc. But like, is there a hurdle there? Do people just like, oh no, it's a very British thing, right? It's very, oh no, I couldn't possibly put myself out there.
Yeah.
Do you think that's why?
Yeah,
That's why we have a deflection of like, oh no, I just have a boring job and I look at spreadsheets. Is that because maybe it's deflection to say, well, that's why I'm not doing it?
Yeah, a lot of people don't like blowing their own trumpet, do they? I certainly don't. But there's something in people's people. You can be an introvert, and there are obviously we're introverts and extroverts and people that are somewhere in between. But generally, the introverts are the people that don't necessarily socially want to sort of get out there and connect and be in loud spaces and all of that. But actually, they still have a story to tell, and they still have a reason for promoting their business and promoting what it is that they do. So I think it's not so much about them sort of getting out of their comfort zone, but just taking baby steps. What is it that they can do that will just take them a little bit further forward? And find a story or something that they can tell, even if they just start with a camera and just talking to a camera, just in little, and talking to family and friends and just starting to explain what it is that they do to other people. I mean, I have so many people say to me, my sister, just constantly, I don't really know what you do. It's like, well, let me explain. And everybody has that opportunity to explain what they do to somebody else. Just get used to doing it, and you will discover it's not until you start speaking your story out loud that you get feedback from other people. And that's really useful. Back when I started Power to Speak 4 years ago, I made the conscious decision to get feedback on what were my superpowers, what other people thought were the great things that, what was I really good at, but also what am I really bad at? Where could I improve? And I thought, well, I'm going to bite the bullet. And so I asked, I think 4 or 5 friends, 4 or 5 former clients, and 4 or 5 networking buddies, say people that I knew through networks. And so I had about 15 different versions come back to me. What do I do really well? What do I, where can I improve? And I was amazed. And I don't think it is quite a brave and vulnerable thing to do, because you don't know what you're going to get back. But I wanted them to be as honest as possible. And actually, the good certainly outweighed the bad, and the bad I could improve on. I knew where that was that I could then improve. So I always recommend people do that, because it sharing your story is a vulnerable thing to do, and that's why people don't want to do it, because they're frightened of being laughed at or being told they're stupid or they're not good enough or whatever that whatever that imposter voice is saying to them. But actually, once you start speaking out loud and actually asking for feedback, you'd be surprised. And a lot of the words, there was a theme of sort of different words that were being used by different people that I could then hold on to for social media and for my blogs, and it just built my confidence around sort of stepping into different, whether it was a networking event or meeting people or approaching potential clients. I had then the confidence because I'd had that feedback.
It reminds me, and I forget where this story originated, so if it's a bit fluffy, I apologize, but I remember someone said to me, I think it was in a networking room or it was a business friend or etc. It doesn't matter. And they said, well, ask around people who your network is and ask, when you think of me or when you think of my brand or my business, what do you think of? Right. So we'll do the exercise here really quickly. I mean, when you think of me and my brand and what I'm doing, what do you think of?
I always think of that hat. You always use.
It's gone.
The hat's gone. But no, I suppose that, and the waistcoat. So I mean, you had that kind of the personality that came through the way you dressed, which you're still a very dapper dresser. I'm not saying that, but actually, when I think of your brand, that makes me think of a brand that's creative and curious, which I think is good.
Yeah. And I think the reason why I asked you is I didn't necessarily want to put words in your mouth, but I think that's a key example of like how I've positioned a lot of what I do and how I do it to imply what I am, right, and what I feel like, and hopefully it will then if you did choose to work with us, you did choose to trust us to do some marketing or trust us to do some filmmaking or etc., then you would understand that it would be to a level, to a standard,
Yes.
etc. In the same way,
Yeah.
if we flip the table, if I come to you, I'm going to think, okay, well, Jackie's going to go deeper into my story than maybe I would have done, because she isn't going to have the, I guess, the hookups that maybe someone would have, right? Speaking personally, or anyone listening, you know, they might have, oh, but I can't talk about that because maybe that's a bit too raw, or that's a bit too much, or maybe I'm oversharing. I mean, how do you ride that line? Because I think sometimes we should share certain things that have happened. My view on it quickly is like, if you've healed from it, happy days, use it as a story. If you're healing from it, no.
No, absolutely. No, and that's absolutely right. Those stories may well come out in a session with me, but I will always say to people, you don't have, that's not something that I'm going to say to you, well, you need to tell people that. That absolutely not. No. If you're not ready to tell everything, then when you're telling your story, it's not about you. If you are sharing something that you've been through or you're going through, it's self-indulgent unless you're doing it for the people you're speaking to. If you're just wanting sympathy or wanting people to know what a terrible life you've had or whatever,
things are really hard.
Yeah, it's all about you then. And
I'm really business, things are really hard.
And but what you need to, that's fine and relevant if it's relevant to your audience. Because if it's not relevant to your audience, they'll switch off.
Well, you could tell the same story. So, this is how I overcame being, you know, I've discussed it in podcasts before. I've discussed it saying, well, 24 was really challenging and really difficult. Okay, but here's actually what I was doing wrong with marketing. Here's actually what I was doing wrong with networking. Here's exactly what I was doing wrong. And this is how I've done it better this year. And this is what I, funnily enough, this year is a lot better than 24, right? So I think it's within that context, right?
Absolutely.
But it was wrong of me not to, I guess, hint at your story a bit, right? You began in fashion, you then moved into acting, and then you help people, I guess, shape their voice, understand their voice. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah.
Did you always want to? Like, have you, I guess, the question that comes from that is, in your current career path, is it where you expected it to be when you were maybe acting or in fashion specifically? Is that like, you go, okay, well, this is the path I'm going to go on and this is where I'm going to end up? And if so, how did you sort of get to where you are now?
Yeah, does anybody actually end up where they think they're going to end up? When I as I said, when I was 9 years old in the playground, I was writing, directing, acting, literally producing. I was doing all of that. And then when I got through my teenage years and went through grammar school and O levels, as they were back then, and I went to my careers teacher and she said to me, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I want to be an actor. And she sort of head tilted to one side and went, I don't think so. She said, do you go to the theatre? And I was like, well, no, not very often. I lived in North London. I wasn't anywhere sort of near that sort of places, those sort of places. And I wasn't doing a lot of drama. I was doing sort of bits and pieces at school. And she said, no, you don't want to be an actor. She said, if you wanted to be an actor, you'd live, die and breathe the theatre. What else can you do? And I'd said, oh, well, I'm not bad at art. So I ended up, and I loved fashion, you know, I always loved dressing up. So I ended up going to fashion college because for better or for worse, the woman had just literally crushed all of my dreams in that one meeting. It was like, well, obviously I can't do it. That's me done. I can't do that. So I became a fashion designer, which was fun at college. Once I actually got into the business and I was I was in the sort of rag trade end, so I was literally churning out stuff for Topshop and Miss Selfridge and H&M and all of those sort of places, and just they would fly me out to Paris and to copy the stuff on the catwalk to then come back and reproduce for our high street. And I thought, this is no fun, this is not creative at all. And a friend of mine was working at the Royal Shakespeare Company in costume. So I kind of moved sideways into costume and I worked there. But obviously, I was at the Royal Shakespeare Company. So I sort of was literally looking through the curtain, watching the actors on the stage going, oh my God, that's where I need to be. So I went to drama school when I was 28, actually. Well, actually, no, I was closer to 30. So I went off to drama school then, came out and did the Fringe, I did Edinburgh Fringe and all of those things, London Fringe, did a couple of bits and pieces, went off to auditions, did some acting, but actually to subsidise that, I got into teaching. And so I was then teaching kids drama and doing Lambda exams and all of this stuff. So I never taught drama in a school, but I was acting coaching, basically. I was running little clubs and things like that. And I think I found I am a natural teacher. There's something in me that wants to actually put my hands under people and kind of guide
and teach.
Yeah. And not so much in that kind of curriculum, this is what you need to learn and this is how you need to learn. But everything that I learnt at drama school, over the years, I've seen how fundamental the training is to everybody, whether it's the breathing, the voice. You know, when you're taking on a character, you need to find out their motivation. What's the intention of everything that they're doing? What's the story you're telling? Who's the audience? And everything now comes back to what I do now. So in lockdown, right up until lockdown, I was still running. I was working more with adults then. I was acting coaching with adults, also going into schools with adult theatre companies and doing sort of work within schools. Lockdown happened, all that work finished, and I then thought, no, I don't want to go back to that. I want to do something different. And so I took a coaching course because I knew, as I say, there was something of the coach in me. And it was during that course I was in a breakout room and we had to explain. By then I was working with people, thinking, you know, how do I work with people with their voices? Because I'd been in lots of Zoom calls with business owners.
Yeah.
You know, I think we met on one of those, you know, in one of those sort of networking spaces, and everybody was like, oh no, we have to make video now. We have to put ourselves in front of a camera. We're on Zoom all the time. People want to know what my 60-second elevator pitch is. And I could see that there was a fear there.
Yeah.
And so when I did the coaching course, I knew by then that that's kind of where I was going. And the exercise within this room, there was only 3 of us in this breakout room, and we had to explain to each other what it was we did for work, or what we were planning on coaching. And so I explained what I did with people, and I said, okay, that's my minute. I've told you what I do. Now explain back to me. What did you get from that? What did you understand from that? And one woman said, you help people market themselves effectively. And I thought, oh, I hadn't even considered that I was helping people actually market themselves. And the other woman said, you help people show up powerfully in the world.
Wow.
And I thought, oh, I like cool, that. Yeah. and so power to speak. It was then all around, you know, the fact that it is empowering when you give somebody that voice. And certainly in the 4 years that I've been doing it, it's just the transformation that I see in people when that kind of penny drops and they go, oh, actually, I can just be me.
Yeah.
They take ownership of all of those stories and all of those experiences. And when they show up with that courage, then the confidence and the excitement of actually sharing that comes from there.
It jumped to mind while you were speaking, so I think I'll mention it, but I remember watching a YouTube video a while ago that said, like, during COVID, when there was a lot of money floating around, working in the arts seemed to be like just the thing, right? There was a lot of filmmakers, there were a lot of marketers, a lot of speaking coaches, etc. But like, I think the thing that sometimes people misunderstand or misthink about sometimes is actually being in the arts, whatever your definition of that is a privilege, right? Working for yourself is a privilege. And I think for me, having the work-life balance is a privilege, right? Like, and I can go a bit deeper into like privilege, right? We live in this a part of the world where I don't have to worry about a bomb landing on my house. I have clean drinking water, etc., etc. I can go down that road as well, of course. But I think for me, it's really important to establish when you are in a privileged position to be able to upgrade your kit, to be able to invest in the business, to be able to first come at it from a point of view of saying, I am in a privileged position and I am grateful for the privileged position I'm in. I guess the question that comes from that, though, is in marketing, in when people speak and when they come across, maybe they don't mean to do it, but do they sometimes come over, not maybe at the start or maybe in their own way, but maybe they don't come over with that level of understanding, that level of privilege first, or maybe they should someone lead with that level of like understanding that level of privilege first, or being grateful for the opportunities that they have?
Oh, that is deep.
because I think sometimes I use the word entitled. I paused because I didn't know what word to use, but I think the best way to describe it is some people can be very entitled. I'm entitled to people watching this. I'm entitled to, I'm not entitled to anyone watching anything I do. I hope they do, and I hope they take value from it. But that's actually down to the quality and the value that I add, which is subjective upon the audience, not me.
Yeah.
My job is to do the best I possibly can in the grateful opportunities I have to hopefully add value to someone else.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many people creating content in a privileged environment really understand that that's the case. I don't know how many people are actually. I think maybe with what's going on in the world at the moment, people are now kind of thinking, well, actually,
my life isn't actually that bad,
exactly. Yeah, I'd much rather be here than there, kind of thing. So yeah, maybe we are becoming more aware of that. I often get people say, if we're going through a talk or they're speaking to an audience, I mean, generally their audiences are potential clients, potential customers. That's the reason they get up and they speak to people, but they don't want to be seen as arrogant. But what I say is, it's more as long as you're confident, you're doing it. What you're speaking about is, like you were saying earlier, people don't like to blow their own trumpets. They don't like to sort of say, look at this. But actually, in some cases, you need to have that. I don't want to say arrogance. Arrogance isn't the right word.
I think it's belief.
But it is a belief, yeah. But it's arrogance with humility. Has this kind of it's the confidence to know that what you're sharing is of benefit, is of value. To know that the experiences that you've had and the accolades, awards, whatever it is that you're sharing, you're not showing off. You're actually saying, look, this makes me credible. This means,
and hey, I worked for it.
Yes, yeah, you can trust me. I have the discipline to get myself to I am running a 5-day, I have done for the last 2-3 years now, a 5-day acting course for stunt performers.
Okay.
So stunt trainees, people that want to get onto the British Stunt Register. And actually, on day one, they come in and they're very, very nervous, as they would be, because they don't want to be actors. They want to throw themselves off buildings and get into fights with superheroes. That's kind of why they want to do it. But they have to act. They're on set. They have to be able to act. So on day one, on the Monday, they come in and they're very, very nervous. They're like, oh, but these guys are athletes, guys and girls. They've been through the Olympics. They've done, these are like proper gold medalists, some of them, in all sorts, gymnastics, horse riding, all of that stuff. But ask them to speak and tell you what they've done, they don't want to do it. So on the Monday morning, it's like, it's like, hold on a minute. On Friday, I'm going to get in a stunt coordinator to talk to you on a Friday afternoon. By Friday, you need to have your 60-second elevator pitch. If you got a lift with Steven Spielberg, what are you going to tell him that's going to make him want to work with you? So through the week, so by the Wednesday, they have to do it again. By the Wednesday, they're now speaking their stories out loud. So we're now finding out that they are, gold medal. One guy had been training with Tom Daley for the last 7 years. Got to the Olympics. Yeah, gold medal, parkour, European champions, all of this. And as soon as they speak that out loud, they get the reaction from the rest of the group. Going, wow, that's amazing. Didn't know that on Monday. And so by Friday, they've now taken on all of this feedback, and they've seen people kind of go, lean in and listen. They want, the people want to know more, and so it's not arrogance. We always say to them, name drop. Don't name. If you've just worked on Tom Cruise's film, don't go into a pub and start mouthing off about how great you are and you've worked with Tom Cruise. That's not the right place to do it. But if you're on a lift with Steven Spielberg and you've just worked with Tom Cruise, that's going to impress him. Not like, oh, aren't you great? But actually, I can trust you because if
I think they'll see them as a colleague. Then it's that quick
Yeah.
Can I see you as a colleague, or are you just a person?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. But it also is that credibility. If you've worked on a certain amount of films, and it goes any business, if you can prove or if you can mention a name that somebody else knows, then they can ask that person how you are to work with. They know that you've turned up for that job on time, whatever, all of that reliability. So don't be frightened to blow your own trumpet, because it really does aid your credibility and your trust and all of those things that you need to build with your potential customers and clients.
You obviously work with people, I guess, in a more public setting, right? When they tell their stories, they're more, I imagine, correct me if I'm wrong, but I imagine they're mostly in front of rooms. They're maybe having it filmed, or they're doing a virtual equivalent, right? So they're speaking to a group of people. Is there crossover between like speaking in front of a room and delivery and creating content?
It's all content, isn't it? I mean, it whatever you write. I mean, this is the other thing with the process that I go through with my clients, is that it might be that they'll come to me because they've got a 15-minute talk that they're giving in a room somewhere, or on a conference stage or whatever, and it might be about personal branding. It might be about software design. Whatever it might be. But we'll still go through that process. I'll still ask them what they do when they were 9 years old, and every story that comes out is relevant. And even if it sort of gets thrown over the shoulder and like, we won't use that yet, they've owned it. Once it's they've said it out loud to me and I've written it down on a piece of paper, it's there in black and white. You've owned this story now. This is yours. And so by the end of the process, they might only have 15 minutes for that particular presentation, but they've done all of that work. That means that they can then create content from it. So then they've got a blog, they've got a story to tell, they can get on video and make some videos, they can do a Zoom webinar or whatever. They now have all of that content. So there is a crossover. I think there's a way of using both.
Because the reason why I asked that question is because when I started doing public speaking, whether that was through a Zoom or as part of a conference or as part of like my own events, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna ace this, right? Been on video 10 years, piss, right? Like been on podcasting forever, etc., etc. Then I had this moment, I was like, shit, hold on, this is different, right? This is not the same. This is like real people and they have real reactions, and they like, if the joke doesn't land, I will have the feedback instantly. And I think that's why I think sometimes there's this, like, I think they're more adjacent skills, but I think for me, I think you should develop both, right?
Yes.
Because I think there's obviously byproducts of what happens across, but when does it go wrong? Do people focus too much on perfectionism, would you say? Because I'm speaking as a content person who helps people with content a lot. Everyone's like, I'm not going to do that. I'm only going to overthink it. Can't do that. I don't have the podcast. Don't have this because it's not perfect.
Yeah.
Right? I don't have the perfect live stream. I don't have the perfect camera setup. I don't have the perfect microphone. So should I still do it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, done is better than perfect, isn't it? And there's no such thing as perfect at all. But having said that, I am the world's worst. I should be making more video. And I do make video, but they're still all on my phone. So I'll do it and then look at it and go, oh, no, that didn't come out right, or my hair doesn't look right, or, it's a bad day, bad hair day, or whatever. And so a lot of those things still sit on my camera. So it's a very vulnerable thing, but I think you do need to just do it. As I said earlier, just a little bit at a time, just get feedback. I used to hate seeing myself on screen. Most of the acting stuff I did was on stage, so I never saw myself on, it wasn't until Zoom, it wasn't until lockdown. When we were all confronted with our own image on on a screen.
Oh my God, is that how I look like? Oh my God.
Exactly. Is that what I sound like? All of those things. But over that year on and off of lockdown, I saw myself a lot on the screen, and you get used to yourself, and actually now, I don't look too bad. I can get away with that. But going back to what you were saying, about how you started out in that sort of space of suddenly standing in front of an audience, having done video for so long. I'd been on stage as a character for so long that when I then had to stand in front of people as me, then that was like, when I used to introduce the kids shows or the adult shows or whatever, we'd put on a performance at the end of the term or whatever, I'd have to stand up and introduce everybody, and I'd got that. My heart would be going, I'd be the sweaty palms. It's like, I don't know what to say. I'd have to read it all. But over the years, and especially now, when I started Power to Speak, I thought, well, I'm going to have to walk the walk. I'm going to have to talk the talk. So I have now pushed myself to do as many podcasts as I can, and get onto stage if I can, put together talks for myself, just so that I can say to people, look, I've been there, I've done it.
Yeah.
And so it just takes practice. It just means that you see, so many people, I think, end up procrastinating over what it is that they're going to say, because they don't think they're going to be good enough. They think they're going to be judged. That they're going to bore people with their story, and so they don't practice.
Yeah.
They're worried about actually saying it out loud, or they put off for so long what they're going to write, is that they will do it all the day before with their visuals and all of that stuff, and then suddenly wonder why on the day it goes down a bomb, because they just haven't given themselves enough time to really work out what it is that they're saying.
I think, for me personally, anyway, like, I think the only reason, there's a couple of things. Like, one is focus on that 1%, right? Like, for me, I would rather have imperfect action that then leads to a 1%, rather than I'm actually comfortable, I'm actually good, because then I'm not moving forward. Then I'm not doing something unique. I'm not positioning, or even if you just look like marketing positioning, I'm not then marketing myself or positioning myself as the go-to expert of what's missing. Like, that's why the podcast is called What's Missing in Marketing Today, because I want to talk about what's missing, not what everyone knows.
Yeah.
Right. And I think for me, it probably will be the same 5 chunks throughout the next series, but it will be the nuance of each guest's input or my input on the day, etc., that will be the reason why someone will potentially then go, oh yeah, okay, we should what we got. But I think the reason why I think some people stop is, I guess, the way to think about it, and this will be in your position as well, like, they want to do it perfectly and they want to be consistent, because maybe they hear, like, for me, you had to be consistent for it to work. But I would rather someone started, got some feedback, stopped, then carried on, then rinse, repeat, rather than they just don't do it. And the way I would maybe rewire, like, having stuff on someone's phone, because I'm sure, like, you're not the only person, right? And I'm sure there's lots and lots of people. For me, this is going to sound really weird, but, like, I don't even think about the concept of posting it, because by the time I thought about the concept of posting it, I could have already posted it and I could be moving on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And I use market data to tell me what's good and what's bad. So something I'm doing right now, because I've got a hub strategy with the podcast, is I'll put all the podcast clips out before the episode is actually live to test which of the clips is actually the best in regards to audience reaction. And then the best 1 or 2 will go on the main account.
Right.
Because of the nature of having 2 accounts, you can sort of test bed it. So I'll give you a quick example. At the time of filming, Sarah's episode came out at the start of this week, and a couple of the clips did really well. So there was 2 outlier clips. When I put it on the main account, it got 4 times what it did on the other account. Now, the other account's new, and it's deliberately designed in such a way where it's just for podcast clips. It's also a test bed, etc. But the thing I found really interesting is, when I did that, I think it was like 500 on the test account, and then it got like 2,000 on the main account, right? But it was because I didn't need to question whether the creative or the clip was any good, because I already knew, because I knew it had already overperformed. So it was like, okay, cool. So now I'm going to serve it to my audience as kind of a test bed already, but also I experiment a huge amount. So I think the reasons why I'm quite a good marketer is because I experiment, because when I get something that works, I run with it, but then simultaneously I'll experiment with another 4 things.
Yeah.
I guess the question in your space is, if someone's listening to this and maybe they have a talk coming out, and they have maybe an instinct during their talk performance. So they have their prep, because they have that preparation, they know that they should be preparing, but they have an idea, right? They have, maybe the audience, this would be really valuable. This idea would be really valuable, but I haven't prepped it. Should they use it?
No. I'm thinking you've done that, haven't you?
I have.
and
so I'm partly asking selfishly, because I have done that.
Yeah. And lots of people have. It really depends on your audience and what you need your outcome to be, because what happens in that moment is that if, for example, you've been given 15 minutes and, you know, you're on a whole raft of other speakers, you've got 15 minutes, you've honed your talk, you've prepped it, you've practiced it, you're there, you're doing it. And then suddenly something pops into your head, you speak it out loud, and then you've got to find your way back to where you were to finish in that 15 minutes, because time is really important.
Yeah.
And people don't seem to understand that actually, you know, either they'll think, right, I've got 15 minutes, I need to cram in as much as I possibly can in that 15. I need to tell everybody everything. Now, give yourself space. Is make sure that if you've got 15 minutes, you've only got maybe 12 minutes worth of content, so that you can really speak in a measured way. If you then come out of that because something else has popped into your head, then you've kind of messed up all of the work that you've done, really. Because what it also does is it takes you out of the moment. And the whole point of putting together a talk that is structured is the whole thing is a story, you know, from beginning to end. It's not necessarily a series of stories, but if you've prepped correctly, you should have the hook at the beginning. It's that whole journey that you take them on. If you suddenly come out of that, it would be some, you know, it would be like if you were watching a film and then suddenly the lead actor stopped and turned to the camera and sort of said, actually, I was just thinking about this. Sorry, where were we? Let's go. But it kind of takes the audience out of that journey that you're taking them on. It can work. And if you are a seasoned professional, then maybe, but actually if it's not something you're used to, then don't do it. Because what you want at the end of that 15 minutes is people asking you questions. You don't want to fit everything into that 15 minutes. You need to put in enough teasers, and you need to be interesting and entertaining enough that actually they want to come up to you afterwards and find out more. So you don't need to put everything in there anyway.
No, I agree. I mean, I think it's the context, right? Like anything, it's context, right? I think for me, every time I've done it, it's been, okay, I had a plan to do, let's say, camera confidence, for example, right? And then I find that the audience I actually have in front of me isn't actually that fussed about camera confidence, or maybe they're already quite confident. Okay, cool. So let me go back into the stuff I already really know and go, right, okay, would they actually more care about the stuff that's now working on social media, right? So I think in my stage where I'm at, I can do that because I have a set of stuff that I know really, really well. And I don't really need to prep that much because I have it passively in my head. So I know what's going on with Instagram. I know what's going on LinkedIn. Algorithmically, I know what's going on. So if I'm ever asked a question randomly out of the blue, oh, what's currently hot on social media right now? Okay, well, short form is normally the answer that most people would give. I would say actually live streaming is probably actually the thing that's hot right now. And the reason is it's counter AI, right? So bridging back to the start of our conversation about AI, it's actually anti-AI, because for AI to be live, it's nearly impossible as of today, right? I'm not saying it's not going to be, it might become, but from my understanding of the technology, from what I've played with, it's nearly impossible for a live stream with people on it to be AI'd, from what I know. And that's one of the reasons why I think it's the unique thing to do, because also it takes a lot of confidence, it takes a lot of planning, it takes a lot of prep, but also it could be the reason why you're found, because it's a different algorithm than the video, than the shorts, than the reels, etc. But do people come to you confidently when they look to speak? Or if they don't, how would you recommend they become confident? Is it just simply that prep, you just do it over and over and over again?
I mean, just coming back quickly onto your point about you in that space, like me, if you are running a sort of an interactive workshop presentation type of thing, then read the room. Always read the room. The number of times I've been into a class with everything, a class, a workshop with everything noted out. This is like 5 minutes for this, 5 minutes for that. To throw it out the window every time, because you are interactive and you're feeding back. You're getting that feedback. So then, yes, and we have that knowledge. We can answer those questions. If you're in a Q&A, then obviously you're talking off the top of your head. You're improvising. Yeah, absolutely. And that's fine in those situations. Absolutely. But if you have a structure, if you are a keynote or part of a speaking presentation, you've got a certain amount of minutes, you want to make an impression, stick to what you've planned.
Is that style though? Do you think people like, because I really love improv. Like,
Oh yeah, no, improv is a big.
I personally
a big part
prefer
of it.
to do improv.
I
If I
al-
ever can, I'll do improv.
I will always say, memorize to improvise.
Yep.
And improv is one. I'm an actor. It's one of the, it's one of my favorite things. And the number of business people that I get improving in one of my sessions, because I run a monthly speaker club, and it's a big part of that. And people are uncomfortable with it, and I understand that. But actually, it is a big part of just getting people to understand that it's not about reading a script. It's not about learning a script. It's about telling stories. It's about, if you've got data even to put in there, nobody's going to remember your data, but they will remember how you made them feel with that story. That Maya Angelou quote, which is fabulous. So improv is great. And if you have been doing speaking as long as you obviously have, then maybe yes. But that's because all of that is memorized.
Yeah.
It's second nature to you. And so people don't come to me confident. No, they don't ever come to me confident. That's the whole point. And I think even the most confident, outwardly confident people, when they get into a room and we start sort of digging down, it's like they everybody has those voices in their head that tell them they're not good enough. Nobody's going to listen to them. So it is all about, I like to say that I get people comfortable and confident with what they're about to say. And that comes from really it's a self-awareness. It comes from, confidence comes from within. And in fact, the word confidence comes from the Latin confidere, con being with, fidere being trust.
Okay.
So confidence actually means with trust. And that trust has to come from you.
I was going to say, it's that. So that'd be trusting. I trust in my ability to be able to do the thing, whatever the thing may be. In this case, it's speaking, but it could be driving, it could be backflipping, it could be etc.
So it's a self-awareness. It's an inner confidence because you are self-aware of your own being, your own stories. Once you've taken ownership of everything, all of those experiences, then it's easy to share them with other people because you've dealt with them yourself.
For those who've enjoyed this conversation, who maybe want to see what you're doing and see some of your content, see some of your older content, perhaps, where's best for people to reach out to you?
Well, saying that, because we had a conversation earlier. I podcast myself for a good few years. So I have a YouTube channel, which is Power to Speak, on YouTube. And there's all my older conversations that I've had with lots of wonderful people, such as yourself. And I did a speaking about speaking live for a while. So they're all on there. They were the half-hour live streams. So yeah, I'd love people to go back and have a look. They can find those also on Podbean and Apple and wherever they want to find them. Otherwise, the website, powertospeak.co.uk, all my stuff is on there. You can sign up to my newsletter, which goes out every couple of weeks, with lots of tips, techniques, and stories of my life. And otherwise I'm on LinkedIn. Come and find me on LinkedIn. It's kind of where I live.
Fab. If you were going to speak to yourself 10 years ago, and if you were going to give advice to that person, what advice would you give them?
Oh God, what was I doing 10 years ago?
Somewhere in the middle of acting and fashion, I'm sure.
Well, no, that was a bit longer ago than that. But thank you for that, Carlton. No, I don't think. I think 10 years ago I was working as an arts. I was working in arts development, so I was running workshops. I was teaching drama. So what would I have said to myself? You can do this. You can actually become your own boss. You can build a business around helping other people. And I do. That sounds really cheesy, but actually, what I do, I love what I do, and it's because I actually can see people taking that next step. And I think I don't think I ever envisaged myself 10 years ago with that ability. And maybe that goes back to that breakout room and just having somebody say to me, you get people to show up powerfully in the world. And I would never have known that 10 years ago, but that's not advice I would give to myself, but I'm very glad it's happened.
Fab. Thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
And if you did enjoy this episode and would like to see more like it, make sure to be subscribed to the channel. YouTube thinks you enjoyed this episode, so why not check that out? And I'll see you very, very soon.